Hey class, let's start off today by seeing what's going on in the news.
We leave you tonight with the players around the country who refused to play and spoke out this week about their experiences being black in America and how they want to change the future. Take care and have a great weekend.
The first steps are to garner attention, and they have everybody's attention around the world right now. If not now, when?
This isn't just about basketball. We aren't just basketball players. We need to understand that when most of us go home, we still are black.
Despite the overwhelming plea for change, there has been no action. So our focus today cannot be on basketball.
We're the ones getting killed. We're the ones getting shot. All you do is keep hearing about fear. It's amazing to me why we keep loving this country and this country does not love us back.
This is not a strike. This is not a boycott. This is affirmatively a day of informed action and mobilization.
I think the most difficult part is to see, people still don't care. Being a black man in America, it's not easy, so.
And it's hard to tell your 14-year-old son that I worry about him when he walks out that door.
We got this little guy right here that we see every day. His life matters. He needs to know.
We all hurt. We all tired of just seeing the same thing over and over again, and everybody just expect us to be okay.
We are expected to play at a high level, give maximum effort, and hold each other accountable. We hold ourselves to that standard, and in this moment, we are demanding the same from lawmakers and law enforcement.
I know people get tired of hearing me say it, but we are scared as black people in America. Black men, black women, black kids, we are terrified.
The people arguing that he deserved it. The people arguing that, oh, well, he should have this, he should have that. He shouldn't have died. He shouldn't have died.
We are going to be the generation that dismantles systemic racism once and for all, now and forever. And we will fulfill my grandfather's dream.
No jokes here. If you've taken any of my other classes about social change, about human rights, this is it. This is what it looks like. We are going through it. You are living through it. And it's up to you to choose what role you play in it. I don't really have any more to add than what we just saw. So, let's go into the lesson. It almost feels silly trying to do my job like normal. What we're talking about today is international law. It's not directly relevant. But this class, my classes, they're all about making sure that you are informed, that you have the tools to play the role that's required of you, and to be able to take some part in positive change. We don't all have a national stage, but we all have the ability to have some influence. So, as long as I'm stuck inside from COVID, I'm going to keep putting knowledge out there. But let's get into it. Today we're talking about international law, and the reading for this lesson is pages 41 through 55 of the book. Last time we talked about sovereignty, the idea that nations, states, have control over what happens in their borders. So, how is international law even a thing? Is it binding? Can international law be enforced? Can it be binding? It's a difference between municipal law, intrastate law, that's like, to the citizens, you will be punished if you don't follow the law, and more just guiding standards of behavior. Municipal law within the state, violence can be personal and private, like theft or prison. Between states, though, violence must be public, or at least on a bigger scale. And the stakes are much higher. And the risks of war, all that war, there's a much higher cost for going to war with some other country for breaking international law than there is for the government putting its citizens in jail. So the risk of war, or losing these high stakes international political power plays, can potentially be enough to keep the peace, even without a police force threatening violence. Now, that said, that is still part of it. The UN does have a peacekeeping force, but they're generally not used for military pressure. No, that's what the US military is for, since we outspend the next, every single nation combined on military. But that's more of we can do a history lesson about the whole US seeing them as the policing force of the globe. But because of the big risks and the big stakes internationally, that's why there's kind of just a general pressure for conformity, especially after World War II, when we saw the devastating potential of nuclear weaponry. But also, sovereignty is not magical. It's just one group of people in a certain area agreeing to follow a certain government. There's degrees of dependence between and among independent states. So, like, the United States, individual states have some sovereignty. But then we look at Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico's not a state, but it is part of the U.S., and even the U.S. is dependent on others to quite a large degree. China, Russia, Canada, Mexico, Germany, the UK. And they're all interconnected economically, politically, militarily. So threatening that web of interdependence is its own big problem. I mean, you can just look at the debts that each nation holds over each other. And there's clear responsibilities, maybe? That's not the best word for it. But then you also have colonies, protectorates, confederations, territories. These all muddy the waters of sovereignty anyway. The states of the United States can secede, and have, over the right to own slaves, but then that came to war. So there is still that question of, does international law have to be backed by the threat of violence? Does municipal law have to be backed by the threat of violence? We'll come back to that one. Here. Are international laws purely contractual then? Are they self-imposed? Can they only be done when the state being bound agrees to be bound via treaties, agreements, things like that. Is it purely deontological that states have a moral obligation to follow these agreements? Is it purely utilitarian to keep the peace, to keep there from being war? If an action that would violate international law or some treaty or agreement is more profitable, either in resources or power, than any consequences that might happen, like sanctions or trade embargoes, would it still make sense to do it? And can we ask that same question about municipal law too? The next section of the book goes into norms. A norm is just when we all agree that this is how we're going to do things. It's how we've done it. It's the kind of behavior that we expect from everyone. So, like, we can set classroom norms of, you know, everybody has to speak politely to each other. Raise your hand if you have a question. Those are just norms. It's things that we follow, not because it's, you know, backed by the threat of violence, but just how we do things. These can be somewhat agreed upon via the United Nations. And also, there are mechanisms for enforcement. The United Nations has its International Criminal Court and the International Court of Justice. So read about those, what they are, how they work, answer some of these questions that I've thrown at you. The book then goes into a different section that starts bringing up several philosophers. Some are Hobbes, Hume, and Hart. While exploring the idea of norms through the lens of natural and positive law. Natural law being very deontological, law from beyond humans, the law of nature, or laws from God, laws that are beyond what we have written down. They existed before us and will continue to exist. Where positive law is more utilitarian. Positive law is the idea that it's made by humans. We just make it. We decide what it's for. It's not based on some bedrock principles. We decide what we want and we make that law. Actually, I did another video on natural and positive law that I will link in the description if you want a deeper overview. That kind of doesn't make sense. But yeah, so I have some questions for you to consider as you read. Is international law just bigger countries bullying smaller countries while still doing what they want? Can the rule of law bind the country with the most guns? Can international norms deal with geopolitical maneuvering so subtle that calling it out does nothing to stop it? God, do I want to go into Russia right now? We'll leave that one. Read what these philosophers have to say. See what makes sense to you, what doesn't make sense. Hit me with questions and try to answer the ones that I've given here. I'm not sure if there's an assignment specifically about international law, but I want to use this as an example of some of the kind of philosophical questions we're going to keep asking about our approach to law and the ways that we use and abuse it. So, stay safe out there, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye.